data charmer. So on DBdeployer, Giuseppe, it's all for you.
Thank you, Fred. Good afternoon, everybody. And welcome to Ask Me Anything about DBdeployer. What you see now on the screen is the main page of the project, www.dbdeployer.com. is a page created automatically by the project on GitHub, which is the official seat of the project. So we are going to see directly this tool at work without any slides, like it was asked by this format. And this is the place where you can find the DBdeployer. What we are going to do, we are going to use three shell screens. The green one is Mac OS, the white one is Linux, and the black one is a Docker container. Why do we need a Docker container? Because I'm going to use a container that is empty. It has only the needed libraries to run MySQL, but there is nothing inside. There's no MySQL, no DBdeployer, nothing. So we're going to start in there from scratch. So what are we going to do? We're going to the releases of DBdeployer. And you see the latest one was created 20 hours ago, but we are not going to take this one. We're going to take something a few days older, and you see the reason in a minute. So we are going to take the DBdeployer for Linux version 151.0. Copy link address. And we go to this screen. So let's try DBdeployer. It should fail. Of course, there is no such a thing. So we copy the thing that we have seen on the browser. And now we have DBdeployer 151.0 linux.tar.gz. We take also the checksum, and we check that the checksum is correct. We expand DBdeployer, and we have this executable, and move DBdeployer into bin. Now, if we run DBdeployer, sorry. We just call it simply DBdeployer. Now we say DBdeployer, it just works. If you call DBdeployer without anything, it will show the main menu of the commands that are available. What do we need to do? We need to make this menu a little bit more easy to use. So the first thing that we are going to do is to enable shell completion. So DBdeployer, you see if I press tab here, it doesn't do anything. So I need to understand or to remember what it is. And here I see that there is a enable bash completion. So it will get the shell completion from GitHub, and now I can enable it. Now, DBdeployer, if I press tab, I see the commands that are available, and I can see, so for example, downloads, and then list, which brings us to the second point of the exercise. We want to start doing things with DBdeployer, but at the moment we don't have anything. So there are two components that we need for DBdeployer to work, and the first component is a directory, which is the binary directory, and by default this directory is called opt MySQL. If you don't like this, you can configure DBdeployer to use something else, but this is the default. So what you see on the screen is the list of tarballs that are available for download. And we want to start with something recent. So we say DBdeployer downloads get by version 80. It tells me that there is an error. It's not really an error, but it's something that I did on purpose. It says that there are many tarballs that match this request. You see, there is 8016, 8017, 8019, and so on. So we say that we want the newest one. And the newest one, I found it, and it's downloading MySQL 8020. It says that the checksum matches. So this is something reliable that I have now on my computer. The second step that I should do is unpack. And now this tarball becomes a version that is available to DBdeployer. So DBdeployer versions, it tells me that in my default binary directories, which is the one that I just created, opt MySQL, we have one version 8020. Now remember that I did not download the latest DBdeployer, but a few versions ago. So it's 151.0, and the latest one is 151.2. How do I know? I can, if I don't know, I can say info version, release. And here it shows you the latest 3 releases that are available in GitHub. The one that we want is the most recent one, 151.2, which is a bug fix release. So we do DBdeployer update verbose, so it shows us what it's doing. It goes to GitHub, gets the latest version, and will overwrite the DBdeployer that I was using until a moment ago. So DBdeployer version, I have 151.2. Okay, so far. So summing up, I have DBdeployer and I have a version available, 8020. What can I do with this version? I can deploy it. If I say deploy, I get a long menu. So deploy has 3 available commands. Commands are multiple, replication, and single. Single means that it deploys a single sandbox. A sandbox is a database server that is isolated, reasonably isolated from other databases that I may have in this same machine. Replication means instead of deploying a single, it will deploy 3 databases and put them in replication. And multiple, it will create 3 database servers without any explicit connection between them. Plus, there are a lot of options that you can use. So let's start with the simplest one. DBdeployer, deploy single 80. I say 80, it will go to the directory of the versions, get the latest one. In this case, there is only one. It's very easy, and create a sandbox with that.
Giuseppe, can I interfere you? You have a question for the previous chapter or command you set. The question is, updating overrides the settings like the bash autocomplete or not?
Say that again.
So when you upgrade the version
yes,
of DBdeployer, does it override your settings like the bash autocomplete?
No, the autocomplete is a file that goes into the autocomplete of the system that you are using. So it's a specific directory for that is different for Linux and for macOS, and depending on the flavor of Linux is also in a different place. So it's a separate process that can be an independent from the update. And when you do the update, it does not overwrite the autocompletion file.
Thank you, Giuseppe. And we can add that it also works with symbolic links, right?
It does, yes.
Thank you, Giuseppe.
So I have created one sandbox, and DBdeployer tells me that the sandbox is in home sandboxes, MSB, that stands for MySQL Sandbox, 8020, which is the version of the database server that has been converted into a name. And it says run DBdeployer usage single for basic instruction. Let's try. DBdeployer usage single. What does it do? It gives me a page of manual of the things that I can find inside a sandbox. And rather than reading what is here, let's have a look directly inside that place. So, DBdeployer sandboxes, and it says that there is one sandbox. The type is single, the version is 8020, and these are the ports that are occupied. Let's try also one thing. Deploy replication. And since replication is something that has many operations, we can say do it concurrently. So instead of creating one server at a time, it will do them all at once. Very good. So it's reasonably quick. we have a replication that is in home sandboxes r sandbox 8020. And if we do sandboxes, now you see that we have two entities. One is a single sandbox. One is master-slave sandbox. Same version, but you see the ports are completely different. So they don't interfere with each other. Let's have a look what we have in the single sandbox. We have a lot of scripts that were created by DBdeployer when the sandbox was deployed. Let's start with the most important one called use. Use, what does it do? It will invoke the MySQL client from the version that we have installed, which is very important because we don't want to use the version for MySQL 5 when you are using MySQL 8, and the other way around. It's customized. You see the prompt says that is localhost with port 8020. This is the user. By default is called msandbox, and there is no database. You don't have anything in this server, but you have several users. Select user host from user. You see, these are all users and roles that were created by DBdeployer. Of course, roles are only created in version 8. The previous ones don't support it. And you see that we have a msandbox user, msandbox read-only, and msandbox read-write. Then we have a rsandbox that is a user for replication. And you have the same users as before, but put on localhost instead of 127%. Also, this is configurable. So these roles that you see here are the main things that you can do with users in DBdeployer. And you can configure them. We have also start and stop and status. So status says this is on. I can say stop. And status says that is off, and then start. You see, I have the sandbox that is reasonably isolated, and I don't have to remember which port, which directory it is. So I have these scripts that will make my life easier when I want to use them. So let's have a look at this. One of these scripts. What you see here, you see that there is a copyright, not very interesting now, but you have information about how the thing was created. It's created by DBdeployer version 151.2 using the template that is called use template, and this is the date when it was created. This template is important because if you don't like the way that this script works, you can ask DBdeployer to use a different template modify it and then do the things that you want. You can also screw up everything with this operation, but it's your prerogative when you play with things that are completely configurable. What else do we have? We have sbdescription.json. This is a JSON file that contains the information about the sandbox. So it says that it's taking the binaries from this directory. It said that the client also is taken from this directory. This is, it could be a repetition here, but there are cases where you need to have two different things. For example, when you are importing a sandbox from another computer, then you need to have a client in this computer. Type is single, version, flavor is MySQL, other flavors could be Percona, MariaDB, MySQL cluster, Percona ExtraDB cluster, and I don't remember, and TiDB. The host, the ports, and then other information about the node. We also have a connection.sql, which is a change master2 command that you can use when you want to replicate from the sandbox. Any questions so far? Okay.
Morgan's about to ask something.
Yeah, I was thinking if it was a question or a statement. I like the way that you kind of pre-pick the ports, and I was wondering if you could describe some of the things about how you pre-pick ports and how you pre-pick UUIDs and things like that to make it friendly. Okay,
so the port by default is the version without dots. So this is the 8.0.20 and becomes 8020. Now, this port might be occupied. For example, you may want to have a second sandbox with the same, a second single sandbox with the same version. So the default behavior of DBdeployer in this case is to give you an error. So deploy single 80. If you don't say anything, it says this is already exists. So you can use force to override, but you can also say sandbox directory equals msb 8020a. In this case, it will do what you want. It will create another sandbox. And what will it do about the port? Let's see. DBdeployer sandboxes. And you see that the second one will have the first available port that is free. If you try this again, you will get 8022 and so on. If you do the same thing for replication, it will try to find the first group of 3 ports, contiguous ports that are free and available. So the general rule is the port for single is the port made by the version, and the port for replication and other combinations is made with a formula that takes the version and multiplies by a fixed amount. let's see, defaults list, and you see the base port for master slave is 11,000. So we'll have a formula to get the port using this fixed value to make it different from any other thing. So the combination between this fixed amount plus the version makes in such a way that we can have different sandboxes of the same version in different combination, and the ports don't clash. If the port does clash, then DBdeployer will search for the first available port. So the result is that the ports will never clash, unless you finish them all, but in this case you will have also exhausted the RAM and the disk in your computer, so you have a different problem. Was this what you were looking for, Morgan?
That's right. And then the other sort of leading question I had is if you could show an example of how to run like MySQL dump inside a sandbox.
Yes.
It's a my shortcut.
So I was saying that we have several scripts here. So we have seen use, start and stop and status. And there is one strange thing that is called my. My is not a MySQL command, but is a shortcut that allows you to run any command from the MySQL bin directory that starts with my. For example, my SQL dump. You see there is a space between my and SQL dump. And the test database. It's empty. Sorry, of course.
And then we have a question in the chat.
One moment.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So here is it. It was my sal dump that, of course, it doesn't exist.
That makes sense. The question in the chat is, can it be configured to use Unix sockets instead of ports as well?
You can already. So one of the things that you have here is this MySQL sandbox, mysandbox.cnf, which is the configuration file that it uses. So you see you have here the MySQL section where you have the prompt, the customized prompt. Then you have the client, and among the things that you see here, you have a socket that is created in the temporary directory. And the same socket is used by the server. So you can use this, you can run the command with the socket. So you say use -s
Capital S.
Yes. And status. So he's using the socket.
Yep, that's very interesting.
And of course, if we look at this file, you see that is using the myCNF template. So you can change this to do your bidding. What else is important here? Okay. You have seen that when you deployed the sandbox, there was the sandbox was just created. I mean, you didn't see any details. The details are in this file that is called initdb. Initdb is another template uses another template, and the contents changes depending on the version of MySQL and the flavor. In this case, it uses MySQL-D with initialize insecure, just because we don't want to chase the random password in the logs. And in addition to that, it will do something that I like, and maybe somebody will not. It will change the server UID to something that is more human readable. For a single sandbox, it will be a combination of zeros plus the port number. For a replication sandbox, it will be something that it tells you which node is it. So this is what I was about to do. If we go to the replication sandbox, we see different kind of scripts. You see, you have here master, node 1, node 2, and inside master, you see the same thing that we have seen in the single sandbox. So master, node 1 and node 2, they are single sandboxes, and they happen to be in replication. You see also small scripts like M, N1, S1, S2. If I do M, I get the master. And you see the prompt changes here. You have master, localhost, the port, and the status. And if I do S1, I get the first slave. In addition to that, I have also check slaves that tells me the status of replication. I have the initialize slaves, which are the commands that we're using to set replication. Also, this is using a template. And I also have one thing that is called test replication. Test replication will generate some data in the master and then retrieve that data from the slaves. And the result, it says that it passes. So if I do check slaves again, you see it will say that some data has been processed. Okay, so this was the general overview of the things that we can do when we start from scratch. Now, let's go to a bigger computer and see what we can do with DBdeployer that has a lot of data available. So we go to my Mac, DBdeployer versions, and you see I have a lot more than a simple, the simple one that we have seen in the Docker. And I say version by flavor. And by flavor, you see I have MySQL, MariaDB, NDB, Percona, and the tiny one, TiDB. In Mac, I have MySQL starting from 5091. In Linux, I can also resurrect MySQL 4.1.22, which is a joy to see because it deploys a replication cluster in 1 second about, while the replication for 8.0 takes 16, 17 seconds. So what do we want to see? We want to see this configuration that we have talked about before. And before I show you the configuration, I want to show you how to get your own interactive manual with DBdeployer. Cookbook list. Here is a list of recipes of things that you can do with DBdeployer that you can have in your own computer. So you say cookbook create all, and it will create all the recipes that you want to use. One thing that I want to show you immediately is custom named replication. If we go back to this one, you see that we have a master, node 1, node 2, check slaves, S1, S2, and so on. Now, custom named replication, and you see we can change the defaults here and name the things in a different way. We are going just to run this and see what it does. What changes is that instead of master you have primary, instead of slave you have replica, and instead of M you have P, and so on. And instead of node you have branches. Not that branch is a better name, but just because I can do it. And instead of initialize slaves, I have initialized replicas and check replicas instead of check slaves. So sandboxes. Check replicas. And of course, this master and slave that you see here, these come from show slave status. So we need some effort from MySQL itself to change everything, but at least we can do our share here.
Fred.
Yes?
I was going to say, get on that, LaFred.
Yes, so the question was for Fred, not for me.
We are on it, no worries.
Not worried at all. So coming back to the recipes, this is basically, you can do the whole presentation using just this. So you can just deploy one, see what is inside, run MySQL cluster, run replication between clusters, a lot of things that you can ask and get the answer on your own. One of the most interesting things that you can do with this is an upgrade. Provided that you have all the versions in your computer, you can upgrade from 5.5 to 8.0. So we will deploy a 5.5, upgrade to 5.6, and then upgrade to 5.7, and then upgrade to 8.0. And in every iteration, it will update a table. So at the end of all the operations, you will see what the upgrade has done in every version.
Can I ask something?
Of course.
If you're running multiple sandboxes, in some cases you might want to do that to compare certain versions against each other and behavior in different sandboxes. Can you run a single command against multiple sandboxes? Like, can you make that easy? Say if you're comparing 5 or 6 versions, do you have to run it individually?
Yes, you can. So let's see, DBdeployer, deploy 50 single. And DBdeployer deploy replication 50. I take 50 just because it's fast. And now we have DBdeployer global. And global, you can do several things. You can do start, stop, test replication all at once, restart, and so on. Or you can do use. Global use, select and you see it tells you where is running the command. This is the single sandbox 50. This is the custom replication. This is the regular replication for 50.
That is really cool.
And you can do other things as well. So there are things that you may want to do inside a single sandbox. For example, in sandbox this one, you can say use all, select server ID. And you see, you have 100, 200, and 300. But instead of use all, you can say use all primaries. In the regular application, it's called use all masters. And in this case, it will be use all replicas. So this allows you to run commands in masters and slaves, different commands. For example, you want to run stop slave only in the slaves. You don't want to run that on the master. And this is available in every combination. So let me run another thing here. Deploy replication topology equals group 80. And while this is running, we go to the Linux and show you what I mean about the template. DBdeployer defaults templates list single. Here are all the templates that are available for single sandboxes. Let's say that we want to change the way the use sandbox works. And so we do DBdeployer defaults template show use template, and we save it into a use.txt. There are a lot of things here, but the thing that we want to do is just add something funny. There is no sandboxes, so we are going to do DBdeployer deploy single 57 minus use template equals use template. I should have chosen a different template name, but in this case, and use .txt. So now it will create a sandbox that is the same as any other sandbox, but when we say use, it will also have some extra text that is just a sign that this is something that we wanted to add. And it's a stupid change, but you can see in the manual that using this mechanism, you can change mostly everything that the DBdeployer creates. So back to the Mac, where I run a group replication.
Just a warning, Giuseppe. 10 minutes till the top of the hour.
Yeah, I know. I saw it. Thank you.
All right.
So we have a group replication where the three nodes are in replication with each other. And you see something that the DBdeployer does for UUIDs. When you run group replication without DBdeployer, you have UUIDs that are completely random, so are not easy to read or pronounce it. In this case, the UUIDs show you which node they are referred to. At least you have some help in the binary logs. Maybe not so much help in group replication, but in regular replication, you do. And the point of this sandbox is that you can run the same commands that you use for regular replication. So you have a group and you can do test replication. It will do the same thing that it does for regular replication. The difference here is that you have three masters instead of one. So you get the tables created in three masters and the same tables retrieved in three nodes that are also slaves. And with this, I think I will stop and wait for questions. I could continue for a couple of hours, always showing something different, but I wanted to show something good in detail rather than going around and not seeing the details of anything.
That was awesome. I have a leading question.
Okay.
If you can scroll back and show the templates that it has, I think one thing that maybe wasn't emphasized is exactly how much effort you have to go to handle the various versions and flavors of MySQLs. I'm curious if you've thought about making that like a library, because there's other projects like I had to implement similar in Vitesse, and I'm sure projects like Schema have to handle multiple MySQL versions.
Okay, so yes. For example, I have a template for GTID options for 5.6 and for 5.7, just because they have a different requirement. I have the grants that are different for 5.x, for 5.7, and then for 8.0. They are somewhere around here. And the reason is that, for example, the grants that you can use in 5.0 will fail in 8.0 because you cannot grant directly without a create user. And some of these things you can see when you run DBdeployer admin capabilities. So capabilities are the things that we have to take care of when we install MySQL server or group of servers. And these capabilities are only related to the installation of the server. So for example, for MariaDB, you have very little because the installation from the practical point of view is 90% similar to the installation of MySQL 5.5. Instead, for Percona ExtraDB cluster, you have a lot because you have everything that is available for MySQL server plus the things that are used and needed for Percona cluster. And this is the MySQL server. You see that there are different things related to every version. Most important is this one. Uses MySQL install DB from 3.3.23 until 5.6. Then in 5.7 we start using MySQL initialize. And Percona server basically uses everything that MySQL server uses, at least from the installation standpoint. Was this the question?
It was kind of a two-part. Have you thought about exposing that as like a library so that other projects can use this this metadata about when stuff becomes available?
Well, yes. I mean, you can use DBdeployer as a library. In fact, has been designed that way. And there is at least one project that I know of, a Percona tool that is using it as a library. So it doesn't run DBdeployer tool, but it uses DBdeployer Go files as a library to create sandboxes inside another application.
Interesting. I'll have to take a look.
But one thing that you can do here, DBdeployer defaults templates. You can export, and export requires a group name, for example, single, my template. So I exported the templates, and here I have all the templates. And for example, the template for 8.0, I can say create user Morgo, and that's it, just this. And then I say import and now when I show the single list single, you see that the grants template 8x has a F here. That means that is loaded from a file instead of being used from the inside templates. So you can use this collection of templates for your own usages if you want to do something to interact with the DBdeployer from other applications, from other languages also. I made in such a way that almost everything is easy to export and then import, and you can do those operations instead of doing that manually. You can automate it with other tools.
So Giuseppe, we're at the top of the hour, but we have one more question on the line.
Yes.
Yes. Here is Vinicius. Giuseppe helped me yesterday. Maybe
Hello,
it's more
Vin.
like a, hey, maybe it's more like a feature request, but seeing the current templates is sometimes I'm changing my sandbox.cnf. And if I'm increasing the Redo log size, it takes longer to start, which is fine. But sometimes I mistype the variable name, and then the sandbox never starts. But it keeps on an infinite loop, and then I need to check the error log to stop DBdeployer. Is this something that I can do this check, checking the error log if some error pop out using templates, or needs to be implemented?
So you have two places where you can see the result of a failed operation. Inside the sandbox, let me show you. There is a start.log. So if something fails during the start, it will show up here. And if it fails immediately after the start was successful, then you will find the information in data msandbox.r. This is the place where all the output of the server is recorded. If you don't have any information in either of them, then you have a bigger problem, because the failure will happen during the initialization. So the thing that you can do, you can delete the data directory, this one, and then start the initdb command manually, so it will show you what was wrong.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll be like this. initdb. And this was successful because everything was fine. But in case something happens, this is the place where the attempt that you can do.
Thank you, Giuseppe. I think time is over. I can see Morgan watching the clock. Click, click, click. So please, Morgan will stop recording right now, and the video will be put on